Turn nothing into everything alchemy. I make the meal, I break the wheel, I shake the grill of enemies. I the hill, I bake the skill, I fake the chill of penalties. We run the block, we done the flock, we stun the clock. We're heavy, we shun the lock, we turn the rock, we won the shock of every state. I'm a concrete alchemist, turning the absolute poverty strictly to gold. Operating exactly the way that the heavily ancient prophecies told. I mix up the syllables exactly like a heavily dangerous chemical, leaving the fake rappers completely and absolutely identical. The flow is a heavy artillery, fire absolutely relentless, leaving the entire perimeter entirely violently senseless. I don't stop breathing your absolute heavy caliber. I keep the concrete bleeding, the undisputed challenger. I study the absolute heavy, completely violent curriculum, operating strictly on the heaviest maximum minimum. I'll analyze all of the heavy geometry built in the pyramids, watching the absolutely heavily violently crying kids. We built an economy out of the absolutely heavy dust, operating completely, strictly, entirely without trust. I look at the microphone exactly like it's a heavily loaded weapon, knowing exactly where my completely heavy boots are stepping. I twist up the heavy linguistics, breaking the absolute dictionary, operating completely outside of the heavy vocabulary. The multi-syllabic assassin dodging the absolutely heavy matrix, leaving the competitors completely learning the basics. I chop up the samples, dropping the heavily absolute knowledge, giving the entire generation a violently heavy college. You listening to the absolutely heavy architect of the sound, putting the entire competition completely under the ground. I carved my entirely heavy initials right into the monument, looking at all of the absolutely heavy violent document. The Brooklyn DNA is strictly permanently immortalized, leaving the entire industry entirely hypnotized. I step from the absolutely heavy shadow into the light, winning the absolute heavily violent, completely don't fight. This is the completely heavily uncut raw philosophy of firing the absolutely heavily violently heavy gravity. Yeah. The math never lies. Only the accountants do. I'm thinking the moves, I'm breaking the rules, I'm taking the jewels from the catalyst. A violent regime, a silent extreme, and all in the schemes for the catalyst. We loading the iron, we holding the lion, we molding the silent of syndicates. The paper is stacked, the cape is tracked, the traders attack when it indicates. I sit in the boardroom, watching the numbers completely manipulate decimals. Counting the profit, watching the arm show accounts become totally immeasurable. I laundered the cash through the real estate, buying up all of the properties, building the empire strictly to dominate, or the local monopolies. They looking at me like a savior, but I am the ultimate predator, stripping the flesh off the bone, and I'm acting as heavily creditor. We bleeding the system, dodging the heavy and violent indictments, living entirely off of the dangerous, absolute excitements. Look at the fractional, completely so tactical, moving so practical. I am the architect, making the intellect absolutely so factual. Washing the currency with heavy urgency, avoiding emergency, cutting the middleman out of the huddle plan, strictly a surgical. I look at the ledger, the ink is completely and utterly crimson red, calculating the absolute value of every single heavy head. We paying the judges, we buying the absolute entire municipality, crushing the opposition with a deeply strategic fatality. The poverty cycle was a business, and I am the heavy executive, executing the absolute vision completely, violently consecutive. You trapping for sneakers, I'm trapping for generational equity, trapped in the heavy, psychological, completely violent complexity. I analyze the deficit, making sure it's exquisite. Every move is requisite, paying the visit, asking them is it strictly so implicit. We moving the heavy narcotics directly across the perimeters, slicing the absolute pie up and acting as heavy disregulars. The feds got the carrots completely recording the intersections, so I got the underground tunnels avoiding the inspections. You glorify death in your lyrics, but I am the one who administers, standing inside of the shadows entirely, alongside the ministers. I close up the books, I lock up the absolute heavy mahogany safe, wiping the bricks from the metal to make sure the entire perimeter safe. The millions are hidden, completely entire entirely untraceable, making a Brooklyn B&A absolutely, yeah, replaceable. I walk to the window, looking directly right over the avenue, wondering exactly what all of it is heavy money gonna happen to. The blood in the letter was permanent, seeping right into the paperwork, doing exactly the absolute necessary, violently dangerous work.
Blood on the silk.
The price of the arrangement.
Yeah, look in my eyes, count the bodies.
Smiling at the top, but the devil's in the basement.
Yeah, fuck a silver spoon. I was fed with a rusty blade. Every dollar in my pocket got a history and shade. It pays the elevation, but despise the gritty calm. I had to weaponize my mind just to monopolize the time. Niggas plotting on my throne, breathing heavy through the wire. I'm sipping Dom Perignon, watching the whole city catch fire. This ain't rap, this is organized structural dominance, leaving hollow point holes in your fake ass confidence. I stepped out the mud with a tailor-made suit. You still begging for a branch, I'm ripping up the root. We talking about the struggle like you read it in the book. I was shaking down the demons for the pennies that they took. Fed snapping photographs, lenses all up in my face, trying to build a Rico, trying to orchestrate the case with the Teflon and stick. The alibi is airtight. I control the heavy shadows in the middle of the night. Bitches whisper my name like a cursed incantation. I'm the absolute pinnacle of this old generation. A masterpiece of violence painted on the canvas of grief. I'm the undisputed king, you just a temporary thief.
They see the penthouse,
And they don't see the payment.
blood on the silk.
Price of the arrangement.
Trust nobody, keep the chamber full.
Smiling at the top,
Yeah.
in the basement.
Let the ash fall slow from the tip of the cigar. I got scars on my soul that I shine every star. If I gotta go to hell, I'm buying up the front row. I mastered the mechanics of the shit you'll never know. Every verse is a bullet, every stanza is the casket. Put your morals in the bag, put your prayers in the basket. This is raw, this is ugly, this is beautifully obscene. The most terrifying architect the streets have ever seen. Yeah. Yeah. The price just went up. The price just went up. I walked in the boardroom smelling like a warlord, looking at the executives acting completely bored. They wearing my pinstripes, smoking on the thin pipes, looking at the heavy, completely, absolutely violent type. They think because I'm from the gutter that I cannot calculate, waiting for the heavy baritone to absolutely manipulate. I slack the heavy leather briefcase right onto the mahogany, staring at the heavily, absolutely cowardly project. I tell them the percentages, strictly the advantages, looking at the heavily, absolute violent damages. You boys are playing with stocks, I'm playing with human lives, dealing with the heavily, absolute violent, completely knives. The corporate structure is exactly like the heavily violent corners, leaving the absolute completely heavily mourners. The only difference is the weapon is a perfectly crafted pen, sitting inside of the absolutely heavily violent dead. I'm reading the contract, finding the loophole, taking the profit and digging a new hole. You thought you could cross me, you thought you could boss me. I'm making it certain that you're gonna lost me. I'm buying the building, I'm firing the chairman, I'm stepping completely right over the bed, man. I take a seat at the head of the heavily shells, a defensive table, making sure the entire structure is completely stable. I look the CEO directly up in his absolutely shaking eyes, watching his completely heavily absolute coward demise. I own the majority shares, I bought them through heavily shells, sending his absolutely entire corporation heavily into hell. The Brooklyn DNA is taking over the heavily violent globe, wearing the heavily expensive, absolutely completely roll. We washing the street money right through the heavily violent banks, rising up completely through the heavily absolutely race. From the heavily violent project strictly to the absolutely pinnacle, leaving the absolutely entire competition completely cynical. I like the heavily expensive cigar with the signed contract, making the entirely heavily absolutely violent contact. Blood ties and pinstripes, exactly the absolutely same thing, bound to the heavily absolute completely violent king. I'm reading the contract, I'm reading the contract, I'm reading the contract, I'm reading the contract, I'm reading the contract. The price just They don't make it to 21 around here. Yeah. I look at the mural, painted right there on the brick. The smell of the poverty making my stomach completely sick. We burying boys before they can even become a man. Just trying to survive in the absolute best way we can. I carry the coffin, wearing the black tailored suit. The tree in the neighborhood rocking right down at the root. He was only 15, he hadn't even learned how to drive. Just trying to hustle $1 to keep his family alive. Caught in the crossfire of a war that he didn't start. A straight hollow bring bullet completely ripping apart his heart. I look at the picture, he reading from the heavy scripture, but the holy water can't clean up this absolute bloody picture. We numbing the pain with the liquor and heavy medication. Lost in the middle of a deeply traumatized generation. His muffler screaming, collapsing right onto the dirt. A heavy primal wheel of absolute unimaginable hurt. I try to hold her up, but the gravity is entirely too strong. We living in a universe where everything is completely wrong. She grabs my lapel, she looks me right in the eyes, screaming, why did my baby boy have to be the one that guides? I didn't have an answer, I swallowed the heavy lump in my throat, feeling like a heavy anchor dragging down a sinking boat. The system is built as a trap, an absolute heavy maze, keeping us locked in a permanent violent haze. They fund the police, but they cut the budget for the schools, treating the kids in the projects like expendable fools. I handed her a heavy envelope filled up with the cash, but money can't resurrect the body from the heavy ash. We building empires on top of graveyards. I leave the cemetery, driving back to the heavy estate, trying to permanently escape my heavy, violent fate. I walk through the marble halls completely and utterly alone, hearing the echoes of the voices inside of the stone. I made it up out of the gutter, I beat the heavy statistics, mastering all of the absolute violent ballistics. But I would trade every dollar, every dime, and every car just to erase every single heavy psychological scar. I sit in the shower, letting the hot water completely scald me. Remember when every single name that the neighborhood called me. The survivor's guilt is a heavy physical weight sitting on my chest and strictly deciding my date. I'm speaking directly to the youth standing on the corner before you become the absolute next heavily mourned mourner. The streets do not love you, the loyalty is a heavy myth. You're trading your absolute life for a temporary gift. Put down the metal, picks up the heavy book, stop taking advice from these heavily traumatized crooks. I am the ghost of the future, warning you from the pinnacle before your entire existence becomes entirely cynical. The Brooklyn DNA is a story of absolute survival, waiting for the heavy peace. Oh, to live, arrival. Take your soul, because they would try to buy it. Four inches of ballistic glass between me and the Reaper. Tinted out the windows, watching how the wind blows, looking for the assassins hiding inside the shadows. The leather is immaculate, the touching is so accurate. Counting up the minutes, waiting for her to calculate. I'm trapped inside the vehicle, everything is spherical. Praying to the heavens for a heavy kind of miracle. The bulletproof limousine, straight out of a magazine, hiding the reality behind the heavy smoke screen. I got the fully automatic, resting in the fabric. Mine is going frantic, strictly feeling schizophrenic. The money is a prison cell, living in the living hell. Waiting for the ringing of the heavy tolling funeral bell. I'm looking at the driver, wondering if he a survivor or a federal informant acting like a conniver. I grip the heavy leather, bracing for the weather, wondering if we can keep this entire thing together. The enemies are multiplying, everybody is lying, even the closest relatives strictly out here spying. You reach the heavy pinnacle, feeling so cynical. Everything around you is completely, utterly clinical. No genuine affection, strictly for protection. Moving through the city with a heavy intersection. The isolation deafening, the silence is so threatening. Waiting for the violence that is absolutely beckoning. Trust nobody, not even a reflection. I signed a heavy contract, waiting for the contact. Moving through the city in a heavy state of combat. The diamonds are reflecting, the feds are inspecting. Everybody plotting, strictly, absolutely disrespecting. The heavy paranoia creeping while the city is sleeping. Looking at the mothers that are absolutely weeping. I built a heavy fortress, dealing with the sorceress, navigating through a completely corrupted process. The millions in the briefcase, looking at the two-face, trying to maintain the lead in this heavy rat race. The bulletproof glass, watching how the hours pass, wondering how long this heavy empire was gonna last. I'm sitting in the backseat, looking at the concrete, listening to the rhythm of my own heavy heartbeat. The luxury is suffocating, the demons are all waiting. Everybody in the city strictly busy debating when the king is gonna tumble, when the walls will crumble, waiting for the heavy baritone to finally mumble. But I keep the iron clutch, remaining untouched, moving through the darkness, absolutely fully rushed. The bulletproof sanctuary, driving to the cemetery. This is the life of a heavily burdened luminary. Preliminary. 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 I saw the paperwork. Yeah. You signed your own name. Yeah. I checked the locks on the door, paranoia in my veins. Hit to the concrete floor, trying to break these heavy chains. I noticed the subtle shifts, the way that you look away, the heavy emotional whips, the words that you're better say. You asking me questions about the heavy logistics, trying to document all of the absolute statistics. Wearing a bulky sweater up in the middle of July, sweating profusely and absolutely unable to look in my eye. I hired a private detective to follow your vehicle, hoping to God that the heavy reality was a miracle. But he brought me the photographs right to the penthouse suite, showing you shaking hands with the absolute heavy police. We slept on the same mattress. Yeah, we slept on the same mattress when the heating got shut off. I gave you my coat when you had that heavy violent cough. We stole from the corner store just to feed your little sister. I patched up your hands when the concrete gave you a blister. When your father walked out, I was the one who held you down. We promised each other we'd take over this entire town. We bled on the same pavement, took the same heavy beatings. Now you sitting in the precinct having confidential meetings. You traded 20 years of brotherhood for a reduced sentence, leaving me to handle the absolute heavy repentance. I saw the paperwork. I saw the paperwork. I saw the paperwork. I called you up to the suite, told you we needed to celebrate. Poured you a glass of the vintage, making you absolutely elevate. You smiled and you toasted the loyalty, acting completely immaculate. Not knowing my shooters were standing outside and completely so accurate. I slid the manila folder completely across the heavy mahogany, watching the color drain out of your face, a beautiful tragedy. You started to stutter, you started to lumble, you dropping the glass, realizing the heavy sand in the hourglass is absolutely past. I asked you a single question: was my freedom worth the price? You crying and begging and telling me you didn't want to roll the dice. I saw the paperwork. I saw the paperwork. I saw the paperwork. I saw the paperwork. I didn't even yell. My voice was a heavy whisper, leaving the entire perimeter completely crisp. I told you I loved you, with the streets demand a tone. When you voluntarily surrendered your every soul, I walked to the balcony, turning my absolute back to you, knowing exactly what the heavy shooters were about to do. The sound of the silence that echo right through the luxury suite. A heavy thud as your body collapsed on the confident feet. I lost my right hand man, I murdered my own brother. Now I gotta go down and lie to your weeping mother. This is the new reality, the absolute heavy car standing at the top of the mountain, realizing everything I lost. I saw the paperwork. I saw the paperwork. I saw the paperwork. I saw the paperwork. Selling umbrellas in a hurricane. Stomach. Stomach rumbling, the refrigerator echoing poverty and heavy coat. The devil doing the tailoring. We trading food stamps for a momentary high. Watching the neighborhood mothers wipe the tears from their eyes. It's systematic, tragic the way they package the panic. I'm dodging the static, keeping the plastic up in the attic. They build a prison cell before they build a new school. Throw you in the deep end and laugh when you drown in the pool. I seen a straight A student catch a hollow police shell just for walking down the wall side of this concrete hell. Ain't no Hollywood endings, no glamorous lights, just the flash of red and blue cutting through the cold night. Look at the infrastructure reconstruction, designed just to trust you. The judge dropped the gavel, ain't no time for discussion. We dying over sneaker brands, bleeding over colors. Generation after generation, burying our brother. Had to weaponize the pain, put the grief in the ink. They poisoning the water that my community drink. I'm spitting naked truths, leaving the microphone bleeding. I am the only heavy voice that the ghetto was needed. So put the chalk on the pavement, draw the yellow tape line. Every syllable I spit is strictly ahead of its time. I traded my innocence just to survive the winner. A masterpiece painted by a heavy-hearted sinner. Selling umbrellas in a hurricane. We paved over the basketball court to build a coffee shop. The ghosts are getting restless. I'm looking at the avenue, wondering what happened to all the heavy brothers that I formerly was rapping to. The corner store is gone, replaced by a salon, sitting on the very same concrete that we bled apart. The yuppies wanting dogs through the heavy fogs, ignorant of all the heavy names inside the catalogs. The blood has been completely washed entirely off the pavement, leaving all the heavy memories locked in the basement. They bought the whole block, staring at the clock, trying to erase the heavy culture and the shock. But I can hear the whispers, the heavy violent blisters, the crying of the mothers in the morning of the sisters. I'm pouring out the liquor, making it go quicker, watching all the heavy street lights starting to flicker. I memorize the faces, the heavy empty spaces, visiting the cemetery, the absolute darkest places. We lost them to the violence, leaving us in silence, dealing with the heavy psychological defiance. The brilliant heavy minds entirely left behind, trapped inside a system that is fundamentally blind. I carry all the grief, strictly the heavy thief, stealing all the oxygen and looking for relief. The Requiem is playing, the heavy mother's praying, listening to exactly what the baritone is saying.
We were kings on concrete.
Now we just myths in a history book, but the DNA never dies. I look at the reflection, making the connection, providing the entire generation with direction. I made it through the fire, stepping strictly higher, avoiding every single heavy federal wire. But survival is a burden, strictly so uncertain, waiting for the heavy drop of the final curtain. I wear the heavy crown, strictly looking down at the ghosts of the brothers haunting the entire town. The legacy is written heavily and strictly smitten by the absolute reality that is heavily written. I'm bleeding on the track, never looking back, making sure the entire culture stays entirely intact.
So let the heavy choir elevate it higher, speak singing for the heavily departed in the flight. The 90s golden era, strictly a chimera, living in the memory, getting absolutely clear.
The broken DNA, strictly geared to state, washing all the artificial temporary shit away. I close the heavy book, take the one last look at the heavy beautiful reality that they took. The corner is entirely erased, permanently replaced, but the heavy spirit of the legends can't be disgraced. Rest in peace.
We were kings on concrete.
They never sleep, so I tank. I'm pacing the hallways, trapped in a solitary confinement, looking at all the complete culinary refinement. The luxury is a prison of voluntary alignment, waiting for the devil to issue a monetary assignment. I look in the mirrors, I see the visionary reflections, worked completely by all the disciplinary corrections. The ghosts of the rivals are making visionary connections, breaking my mind in the heavy fragmentary sections. I haven't slept in a week, the insomnia heavily paralyzing. The absolute truth of my violent history completely terrorizing. I grip the cold iron, sitting alone in the auditorium, turning this multi-million-dollar mansion into a crematorium. can hear the voices whispering. I can hear the voices whispering right inside of the ventilation. Trying to maintain the absolute highest level of concentration. Every shadow looks like an assassin, holding a loaded metallic weapon, watching exactly where my heavily exhausted feet are currently stepping. I pour out the liquor, but I can't swallow the medicine, waiting completely for all of the heavily violent adrenaline. The marble is freezing, chilling my absolute skeletal structure, waiting for the entire psychological vessel to rupture. I see the faces of the brothers that I heavily left behind, playing entirely like a movie screen right in my stressed mind. We promised to make it together, completely heavily unified. Now I'm the only survivor, and completely heavily crucified. I stare at the ceiling, analyzing the architectural design, realizing the heavy boundary I crossed was a tactical line. The diamonds are flawless, strictly a geometrical perfection, but they should not offer my absolute soul any spiritual protection. I pay for the heavy securities gone in the iron gates, but the real absolute enemies are the heavily violent fates, sitting completely inside of my own corrupted imagination, a product of the absolute heavily poisoned generation. The sun is coming up, bleeding right through the expensive curtains, making the absolute heavy reality violently certain. I wipe the cold step from my completely exhausted forehead, remembering everything that the heavily departed before said. And crown is a heavy burden and absolute monolithic weight, deciding entirely all of my absolute hypocritical fate. I finished the glass of the vintage, dropping it right to the floorboard, living inside of a heavily violent, completely ignored war. Timeline secured. Let the tape roll. Timeline secured. Let the tape roll. Timeline secured. Let the tape roll. Yeah. I stepped through the portal, completely immortal, avoiding the entirely fatal. I started from absolutely nothing, rising up completely from the heavily violent cradle. They thought that the story was over, written these heavily violent blood. I am the heavy, completely absolute, entirely violent flood. I rewrote the heavily absolute, completely violent history, leaving the absolutely, entirely, completely heavy mystery. The year is 1998, and I am entirely breathing, looking at all the enemies that are entirely, completely seething. Timeline secure, let the tape roll. Timeline secure, let the tape roll. I'm taking making the absolute heavy, completely violent laws. I'm crushing the, hushing the heavily absolute, completely violent flaws. I survived the heavily, absolutely, completely violent night, stepping entirely, completely into the absolutely heavily light. I look at the heavy, completely, absolutely violent empire, walking completely, entirely, heavily right through the fire. We dropping the double albums, securing the absolute votes, leaving the entirely, completely, heavily, absolutely false. The east and the west are completely, entirely, heavily unified, leaving the absolute, heavily, entirely, completely crucified. Nah, I'm secure, let the tape roll. Tape roll. Nah, I'm secure, let the tape roll. I look through it heavily, absolute, completely violently glass, watching the absolute 26 heavily, entirely pass. The engineer in the lab heavily, completely restoring, leaving the absolute heavily, entirely, completely soaring. He captured the heavily, absolute, entirely, completely cadence, avoiding the absolute heavily, entirely, completely faded. The Brooklyn DNA is a heavily, completely absolute science, operating completely, entirely, but the heavily absolute defiance. I sit on the heavy, completely absolute, entirely grown, leaving the absolute heavily, entirely, completely old. The permission is drafted, completely, entirely, heavily signed, leaving the absolute heavily, entirely, completely blind. Timeline secure, let the tape roll. Timeline secure, let the tape roll. Let me show you how to build a pyramid in the projects. I calculate the revenue, walking down the avenue, looking at the clientele, navigating through the hell, strictly the unorthodox, stepping out the paradox, moving the narcotics in the middle of the project. You gotta have a discipline, knowing who you listen listening. Watching how the diamonds on the Rolex are glistening, but underneath the luxury, dealing with the treachery, building up an empire of absolute supremacy. I started with a fraction, demanding a reaction, mastering the numbers and the laws of subtraction. They thought it was a fantasy, a temporary fallacy. Now I own the dean to the whole fucking galaxy. I analyze the deficit, making sure it's exquisite. Every single move is strictly highly requisite. Crossing state boundaries, marching down the foundries, washing all the paper in the underground laundry. So playing with the decimals, I'm moving they immeasurable, treating the entire competition like they pleasurable. A kingpin phenomenon, running a machine-a-thon, sipping on the absolute finest Perignon. I write the Constitution, strictly the solution, guarding the perimeter from any institution. The blueprint is concrete, dominating the street. Every single syllable a legendary feat.
Look at that architecture. You can't buy this level of precision.
You gotta bleed for it.
You can't buy this level of precision.
You gotta study the philosophy, dodging the atrocity, moving with a heavily calculated velocity. The underground economy, strictly the astronomy, building up the structure with a brutal autonomy. They coming with the audits, I'm receiving all the plaudits, hiding all the heavy metal strictly in the closets. You looking at the mastermind, leaving them all, but I'm walking through the darkness completely, utterly blind. But the vision is impeccable, completely undetectable, making every dollar absolutely respectable. The street level corporate, swallowing the orbit, dropping heavy knowledge for the one to absorb it. I'm drafting up the documents, surveying the continents, moving with the absolute heaviest. The confidence, the ballroom executive, purely so consecutive, leaving the entire industry completely speculative. From the corner store corner to the luxury sauna, I am the original, strictly the prima donna, the heavyweight champion, lighting up the canyon, moving with the ghost of my fallen companion. So study the blueprints, looking for the heavy hints. I am the undisputed, making all the rivals wince. Class dismissed. All rise for the honorable. I walk in the courtroom, smelling the dew, wearing the customized suit. I look at the judge, holding a grudge, ripping the tree by the root. The feds got the wiretaps, weighing the trap, bringing the boxes of files. They trying to bury me, acting so scarily, walking completely for miles. I sit at the defense table, completely emotionally detached, knowing exactly how the heavy indictments were entirely hatched. My lawyer is a shark, swimming entirely through the legislation, fighting the absolute, completely, heavily corrupted nation. They hit you with the Rico, trying to give me a century, locking the undisputed king inside of the penitentiary. Look at the prosecutor, pointing the finger, he trying to linger, he thinking he got me. I'm paying the witnesses, handling businesses, leaving the absolute evidence sloppy. The jury is sitting and sweating heavily, fretting, exactly regretting the absolute duty. I'm giving them nothing, I'm calling them bluffing and leaving them absolutely, completely moody. The door swing open and the heavy informant walks into the room, bringing the absolute heavier, feeling the violent gloom. It's my former lieutenant, the man that I absolutely fed. Now he is sitting completely up there and trying to take my head. He raises his right hand, swearing entirely right on the Bible. They're coming completely and absolutely a heavily violent rival. He points right at me, telling the jury about the organization, delivering an absolute, completely heavy assassination. My lawyer stands up, adjusting his heavy imported tie, looking the heavily shaking informant directly right in the eye. He pulls out the bank records, showing the absolute bribery, exposing the heavily, completely cowardly, absolute thievery. Isn't it true that you cut a deal just to save your own skin? Isn't it true that you are the one who committed the sin? The courtroom at once, the judge starts heavily banging the gavel, watching the entire prosecution completely, entirely unravel. The jury comes back, holding the absolute heavy decision, looking at me with the completely terrified absolute vision. The foreman stands up, clearing his absolutely nervous dirt, reading the completely heavily absolute paper he wrote. Not guilty on all of the absolutely heavy charges. I step on the street and I jump right into the heavy barges. The Teflon died, completely heavily, entirely acquitted. Knowing exactly the violent crimes that I heavily committed. All rise for the honorable. All rise for the honorable. I don't even recognize the eyes anymore. I wipe the steam off the glass, looking at a ghost. The undisputed heavyweight that they fear the most. I got a closet full of silk, in the driveway full of chrome, but I feel like a stranger inside my own home. The money changed the scenery, but it didn't change the soul. It just dug it deeper, completely inescapable home. I'm looking at the scars right across my abdomen, remembering the violent streets that I was heavily trapped up in. Dodging the bullets and hopping the fences, I'm losing my senses, I'm taking the crown. Moving the product and paying the judges, I'm holding the grudges, I'm burning the town. Yeah, then I step back into the shadows, looking at the absolute, completely heavily violent gallows. I sold a piece of my humanity just to feed the family. Now I'm dealing with the heavily psychophysical calamity. They want the king to smile for the heavily flashing cameras, but my mind is being beaten by heavily violent hammers. I remember when the corner was the only territory. Now my life is a heavily syndicated violent story. The kids are looking up to me, trying to emulate the swagger, not knowing I'm walking around with a heavily hidden dagger. I want to tell them to run, absolutely heavily skating, before the violent cockroach entirely, completely shakes it. But the hypocrisy is chokingly sitting in my throat. I'm the captain of a heavily, completely sinking boat. I put the gold chain on, it feels like a heavy noose. Dealing with the deeply absolute cycle to abuse. I pour a glass of the brown, trying to numb the pain. Listening to the heavily, completely violent rain. I am the phantom, a heavily, beautifully tragic masterpiece, waiting for the violent, heavily, absolute, completely release. The mirror never lies, it shows the absolute truth. The monster that was created in the heavily violent youth. Violent youth, violent youth, violent youth, violent youth.
I don't even recognize the eyes anymore. The eyes anymore. The eyes anymore. The eyes anymore.
Look at the chandeliers. They look like frozen tears. Look at the chandeliers. Look at the chandeliers. They look like frozen tears here. I step in the room, it's a criminal mind state. Operating purely on the pinnacle blind faith. Looking at the calendar, orchestrate the timeline. Sipping on the vintage, we celebrate the fine wine. But look at the reflection inside of the crystal glass. I see the heavy phantoms of the violently distant past. I'm wearing the cashmere, tailoring the custom suit, but my soul is still rotting heavily at the custom root. They see the multi-millions, the heavy executive, moving through the city strictly, completely consecutive. But they didn't see the winners with the oven door open wide, trying to heat the apartment, swallowing my broken pride. Mama working double shift, sleeping on the swollen feet, while I was learning mathematics out on the frozen street. I traded my innocence just to buy her a sanctuary. Now I'm the undisputed king of the local cemetery. I sit at the head of the table, cutting the delicacies, looking at my brothers, counting the heavy discrepancies. We went from splitting $1 for corner bread to dodging the federal indictments hanging overhead. I look in their eyes, I see the heavy paranoia. Everybody wondering who was hiding the lawyer. The money is a parasite, eating the brotherhood, stripping away the lawyer too entirely for motherhood. I bought them the luxury vehicles, paying the mortgages, hiding the heavy artillery out in the storages. But the laughter is hollow, the smiles are artificial. Every single conversation is strictly so superficial. I pour out the liquor right onto the imported rug, remembering the heavy days when I was a younger thug. The absolute truth is the heavy crown is a guillotine, waking to sever the head of the absolute illest thing. You want the throne? Take it. But you gotta take the ghosts that come with it. But you gotta take the ghosts that come with it. I look at the heavy statistics, twisting the narrative, knowing if the absolute violent, it's strictly imperative. The riot like towns are moving right in the shadows now, waiting for the heavy commander to absolutely take a bow. But I am the architect, drafting the heavy blueprints, leaving the absolute permanent violent footprints. I ordered the hit on the man that I used to call a friend, knowing that the heavy betrayal was strictly the bitter end. I looked in his mother's eyes down at the funeral, standing in the heavy rain, completely so unusual. I paid for the casket, I paid for the floral arrangements, dealing with the heavy psychological estrangements. This is the new reality, strictly the Hollywood, doing exactly whatever the heavy survivor would. I'm staying the list. I'm standing alone in the balcony, watching the city sleep, knowing that the heavy foundation is absolutely full beef. The sirens are echoing right through the heavy atmosphere, reminding me entirely of the absolute heavy fear. Mastered the lexicon, dropping the heavy hexagon, leaving the fake rappers completely entirely be gone. But one is the point of the paper if you are soulless, wandering through the heavy mansion completely goalless. The Brooklyn DNA is the heavy and violent curse, written in blood on the absolute final words. I'm the designated speaker for the heavily traumatized, looking at the naked truths completely unglamorized.